The meeting chamber floated in the darkness of space, a crystal sphere that caught the light of distant stars. Inside, beings from across the galaxy gathered in fear. Some were tall and thin like living glass. Others were covered in soft fur that changed colors with their emotions. A few floated in tanks of glowing liquid. They were all different, but today they shared the same terror. Ho stood at the edge of the chamber, trying not to stare. He was human, and humans had only learned about aliens 3 weeks ago. The message had reached Earth by accident, carried by an old probe humanity had sent into deep space centuries before. Someone out here had found it, traced it back, and sent a reply. Not a greeting, a cry for help. Ambassador Hun approached him. The alien looked like a collection of purple crystals shaped roughly like a person. When it spoke, the sound came from vibrations in its body. "Thank you for coming, human Ho. We did not know if anyone would answer." Ho had been a soldier once, back during the wars that nearly destroyed Earth. Now he was a diplomat because he knew how to stay calm when everything was falling apart. "Tell me what's happening," he said. Hun led him to a display that showed a map of the galaxy. Red marks covered one entire arm of the spiral. The alien said, and its crystals dimmed with sadness. "They came from beyond our space 5 years ago. We tried to communicate to find peace. They do not want peace. They want to consume." The display changed, showing a planet. Cities covered its surface, beautiful towers reaching toward the sky. Then the image shifted. The same planet, but now the cities were gone. The surface crawled with something that looked like a mass of insects, but bigger, more organized. They moved together like a wave, covering everything. 17 worlds, Hun said. 17 civilizations gone, billions of lives consumed. They take everything, every being, every resource, and add it to their swarm. They learn from what they take. They grow stronger. Ho watched the images cycle through. More planets, more devastation. What have you done to fight them? "We tried to defend ourselves," another alien spoke up. This one looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. "We built shields around our worlds. We created barriers in space. We even designed weapons, though it pained us. And nothing works. They adapt too quickly. They overwhelm any defense. We are scientists, merchants, artists. Our civilizations grew in peace. We have no concept of total war." Ho felt something cold settle in his stomach. He understood what they were saying without them speaking it directly. These species had never known real conflict. They had evolved on gentle worlds under kind stars. They had built their civilizations on cooperation and trade. War to them was a theoretical problem, something to be solved with logic and negotiation. Humans knew better. "Show me your military capabilities," Ho said. They showed him. Ships designed to explore, retrofitted with defensive shields. Weapons that could disable but not destroy. Tactics built around retreat and survival, never attack. They had databases full of military theory but no practical experience. It was like reading about swimming and then jumping into the ocean during a storm. "We heard your old transmissions," Hun said. "The probe you sent into space long ago. It carried messages of hope, of exploration, of peaceful contact. We thought, we hoped, that you might be the answer, that humanity might be the saviors we needed." Ho almost laughed, but it would have been bitter. The probe they were talking about had been launched during Earth's golden age, before the collapse wars, before humans turned their weapons on each other and burned their own world. That hopeful message was from a humanity that no longer existed. "I need to send a message home," he said. "And I need to see more data, everything you have on their tactics, their biology, their behavior patterns." They gave him a room and access to their databases. Ho spent 3 days reviewing everything. He barely slept. The more he learned, the worse it became. They were efficient, adaptable, and utterly ruthless. They hit hard and fast, overwhelming defenses before anyone could react. They used the resources of each conquered world to build more ships, more weapons, more of themselves. But they had weaknesses. Ho could see them. The swarm was predictable in some ways. They always chose the same approach patterns. They relied on overwhelming numbers rather than tactical surprise. They had never faced an enemy that would do anything to win. On the fourth day, Ho sent his message to Earth. He sat in the quiet room, looking at the camera, trying to find the right words. How did you explain this to people who had spent the last 50 years trying to forget they were capable of monsters? "This is Ho," he said to the recording. "First contact is confirmed. Multiple species organized under what they call the Galactic Council. They're peaceful, advanced in some ways but weak in others. They're facing an extinction-level threat called It's a hive mind consuming everything in its path." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "They asked us to help because they thought we were like them, peaceful explorers, scientists. They don't know about the collapse wars. They don't know what we did to ourselves, what we're capable of." Another pause, longer this time. "They need help, real help, the kind that doesn't come with rules or mercy. They need someone who understands that sometimes survival means becoming the thing you fear most." He looked directly at the camera. "They begged the stars for angels, but they don't need angels, they need devils." He stopped recording and sent the message through the quantum relay. It would reach Earth in hours. The response would take days, maybe weeks. The council would want to debate, to form committees, to discuss options. But Ho had included something else in his message. A single line of text, a code he hadn't used in 30 years. A code from the wars when he served in a unit that didn't officially exist. A unit that did the things no one else would do. The code was simple: send the ghosts. Outside his window, another council world burned in the distance. They had found it 3 days ago. There was nothing anyone could do but watch and wait for the swarm to finish feeding. Ho turned away from the window and began preparing. If Earth sent who he thought they would send, the council was about to learn what humanity really was. Not the hopeful species from the old probe message. Not the peaceful explorers they imagined. They were about to meet humanity's devils. And Ho wondered if, when this was over, the council would wish they had never sent that message at all. The human fleet arrived 6 weeks after Ho sent his message. They came out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and every sensor in the Council Defense Network screamed warnings. Hayan watched from the bridge of her ship, the Winter's Edge. She had been waiting here, a survey vessel caught between Earth and the Council forces. Now she could only stare at what humanity had sent. The ships were wrong. That was her first thought. They didn't look like the sleek exploration vessels humanity had been building before the wars. These were converted colony ships, mining barges, even old military hulls that should have been scrap metal decades ago. They bristled with weapons that looked crude and vicious, bolted onto the hulls wherever space allowed. "They sent the worst of us," she whispered. Her communications officer looked pale. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the flagship. It's designated as the Iron Rain." "Put it through." The face that appeared on her screen made Hayan's blood run cold. Commander Jinwoo looked like he had been carved from stone and anger. Scars ran down the left side of his face, disappearing into his collar. His eyes held the kind of emptiness that came from seeing too much death. "Survey vessel Winter's Edge," Jinwoo said. His voice was rough, like gravel. "This is the 5th Expeditionary Force. We're taking command of all human assets in this region. You will provide us with all tactical data on the Council defenses." "Commander, the Council hasn't authorized military action. We're supposed to be observers, maybe advisors." "I don't care what the Council authorized," Jinwoo cut her off. "They asked for help, we're here, everything else is noise." The transmission ended. Hayan looked at her crew. They all knew what the 5th Expeditionary Force was. Everyone who survived the collapse wars knew. They were the units that fought in the worst places, did the worst things, and somehow kept winning when everything said they should lose. Below them, the swarm had been attacking for 2 days. The Council Defense Fleet tried to hold them back, but it was like trying to stop a flood with your hands. The swarm just kept coming, wave after wave of living ships that threw themselves at any target. Jinwoo's fleet moved toward the planet. Heian watched, expecting some complex tactical maneuver. Instead, the human ships just accelerated straight at the swarm. "They're going to die," her navigator said. "That's suicide." But it wasn't. The first human ship that reached the swarm launched something that made Heian's sensors go crazy. Not lasers or missiles, something else. The ships in its path simply stopped. Their organic hulls froze, then shattered as the cold of space cracked them apart. "Nuclear-pumped lasers," her science officer said, horror in her voice. "They're using nuclear explosions to power their weapons." More human ships fired. Kinetic kill vehicles, simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, tore through the swarm like bullets through paper. They tried to adapt, to change their formation, but the humans had already moved on to the next weapon. Chemical fire bloomed in the vacuum. The ships burned, and their screams echoed across all frequencies. On the planet's surface, the swarm had covered half the northern continent. The Council forces were trying to evacuate civilians, saving who they could. Jinwoo's voice came over the general channel, cold and practical. "All Council ships, retreat to minimum safe distance. We're implementing scorched earth protocols." Ho's voice cut in. He was on the Council station, watching everything. "Jinwoo, there are still millions of people down there. Then they should have evacuated faster. If we can't hold this world, we make sure the swarm gets nothing from it." The human ships in orbit shifted position. Heian realized what they were doing a second before it happened. They were targeting the orbital infrastructure, the massive stations that processed resources, the elevators that connected space to ground, the satellites that powered the planet's defenses. "No," she breathed. The humans fired. Kinetic weapons, simple but devastating. The orbital structures began to fall, massive pieces of metal and machinery pulled down by gravity. They would hit the planet like meteors, right where the swarm was thickest. The Council aliens watched in shock as their own infrastructure became weapons. The impacts created firestorms that swept across the continent. The swarm burned, but so did everything else. Commander Sung led the Marine forces that hit the ground after the bombardment. He was shorter than Jinwoo, but somehow more frightening. He smiled when he fought, like violence made him happy. His Marines wore armor that looked like it had been through 100 battles. They carried weapons that fired explosive rounds, chemical payloads, and things that made the scream in frequencies that hurt to hear. Jin coordinated the attack from her tactical station. She was calm, almost serene, as she planned ways to kill the swarm. Her screens showed attack patterns that the Council had never considered. Attacks from below, using the planet's crust itself as a weapon. Viruses designed to corrupt the swarm's communication. Psychological warfare against a hive mind. "They're not fighting," one Council observer said, watching the tactical feeds. "They're exterminating." And they were winning. In 3 days, the human force cleared of but the planet would never be the same. The continents where the swarm had landed were scorched wastelands. The orbital infrastructure was gone. Millions had died in the crossfire. The Council sent a delegation to meet with Jinwoo. Ho went with them, his face tight with anger and shame. "You destroyed the planet to save it," the lead counselor said. "It was Hun, the same alien who had first contacted humanity. Its crystals were dark, almost black with emotion." Jinwoo stood in his command center, surrounded by tactical displays still showing the aftermath. "The planet exists. Your people exist. The swarm doesn't. That's a win." "At what cost?" Hun's voice vibrated with horror. "You used weapons we banned centuries ago. You killed civilians. You turned our own infrastructure into weapons of mass destruction. I used the tools that worked, Jinwoo said. He turned to face them and his face showed no emotion. You asked for salvation, not mercy. You wanted someone to save you from we did that. We asked for protectors, for saviors. You asked for help from a species you didn't understand, Jinwoo interrupted. You heard our old messages, the ones from before the wars, and thought we were like you, peaceful, gentle. We were once, but we broke ourselves learning how to survive. Now you get the result of that lesson. Ho stepped forward. Jinwoo, we can win this without becoming monsters. Jinwoo looked at him, and for a moment something almost like pity crossed his face. Ho, we became monsters a long time ago. The only question now is whether we're their monsters or yours. He turned back to the council delegation. They are regrouping at 3 other systems. I'm taking the fleet there next. You can come with us and learn how we fight, or you can stay here and debate the ethics of survival. Your choice. The delegation left. Ho stayed behind. You could have done this cleaner, he said quietly. Saved more lives. I could have, Jinwoo agreed. But that would take time, and time means more worlds fall. I'm not here to make you feel good about yourselves. I'm here to win. Far across the system, in a medical bay on one of the converted colony ships, Dr. Bora worked on wounded Marines. She had seen the tactical reports. She had watched the feeds of the bombardment, and she had started keeping a private log, documenting everything. Because she knew that someday, someone would have to answer for what humanity was doing out here. Someone would have to explain how the saviors became worse than the enemy they were fighting. But not today. Today, she just tried to save the soldiers who fought humanity's ugly war. And outside, in the cold dark of space, the human fleet prepared to jump to the next system. They were waiting, and humanity's devils were coming for them. The war spread across 12 systems in 3 months. Everywhere they appeared, humanity's fleet followed. And everywhere humanity fought, the council species learned new words for horror. Young sat in his fighter cockpit, hands shaking as he waited for the launch signal. He was 23 years old. He had been flying combat missions for 8 weeks. His squadron started with 20 pilots. Now there were 6. Blue Squadron, prepare for launch. Jin's voice came through his helmet, calm as always. She was coordinating the attack from the Iron Rain, moving squadrons like pieces on a board. She never seemed bothered when those pieces didn't come back. Acknowledged, Young said, trying to keep his voice steady. The fighter catapulted into space, and immediately the battle surrounded him. The fleet was huge, a mass of organic ships that moved together like a school of fish. Human ships cut through them, firing weapons that left trails of fire and destruction. Young's targeting computer locked onto a cruiser. He fired, watched his missiles hit home, and the alien ship exploded. 3 months ago, that would have made him feel something. Now it was just another target. Blue 2 is hit, someone screamed over the channel. Blue 2, eject, eject. The transmission cut off. Young didn't look, couldn't look. He just found the next target and kept firing. When the battle ended 6 hours later, Blue Squadron had 4 pilots left. The briefing room was quiet as they waited for the next mission assignment. No one talked about the ones who didn't come back. There wasn't time. 70% casualties, Commander Sung said, looking at the numbers. He didn't sound upset. Acceptable losses. We killed 3 times our number. Young wanted to scream. Wanted to tell him that Blue 2 had a name, had dreams, had a family waiting back on Earth. But he just sat there, staring at nothing, feeling something inside him break a little more. In another part of the fleet, Ha worked in a room that officially didn't exist. She was an intelligence officer, which meant she did the things that no one wanted to talk about. Right now, she was connected to a captured specimen, using neural interface technology to pull information from its mind. The creature screamed, not in pain exactly. They didn't feel pain the way individuals did, but breaking into the hive mind, pulling out secrets that cause something like agony. I have coordinates for their staging area, Ha said to her assistant. Her voice was flat, professional. She didn't let herself think about what she was doing. Couldn't, or she'd never be able to do it again. The specimen. Dispose of it, get me another one. The council had observers now, watching the human operations. One of them, a gentle being called, had witnessed Ha's interrogation. It stood outside the chamber, its fur flashing colors of distress and disgust. This is torture, said. You're torturing a living being for information. Ha looked at the alien through the glass. Yes. How can you do this? How can you live with yourself? Ha was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled up a file and displayed it on the screen between them. It showed a planet, one of the ones that had consumed before humanity arrived. That's isn't it? Ha said. Population 12 billion before the came. Population 0 after. They didn't kill your people quickly. They assimilated them, absorbed them into the hive. Your people are still in there somewhere, screaming inside the swarm's collective mind. His colors went dark. I do this so we can end them faster, Ha continued. Every piece of information I pull saves lives. Maybe not today, maybe not in a way you can measure, but it matters. And if that means I can't sleep at night, if it means I'm going to hell when this is over, then that's the price. The alien left without another word. On the human flagship, Jinwoo and Jin reviewed their latest strategy. It was called the Burn Zone Protocol. The idea was simple and terrible. Identify systems between human territory and the Advance. Evacuate any life. Then sterilize the entire system, making it impossible for the swarm to use. We'll need to collapse 3 stars, Jin said, marking systems on the tactical map, and render 14 planets uninhabitable. The Council will protest. The Council always protests, Jinwoo said, until they see it working. They had discovered that they couldn't cross empty space easily. They needed resources to sustain their fleet, materials to build more ships. Take away those resources, create a barrier of dead systems, and you could slow the swarm's advance. It meant destroying worlds that had never seen war. Worlds with ecosystems, with beauty, with potential. But Jinwoo didn't hesitate. Was the engineer who built the weapons that made it possible. He was 40 years old, had 3 children back on Earth, and designed things that could end civilizations. His latest project was a device that could destabilize a star's fusion reaction. It's beautiful in a way, he said to one of his assistants. The physics are elegant, the math is pure. It's only when you remember what it's for that it becomes terrible. The Council learned about the Burn Zone Protocol when the first star died. They sent an emergency delegation to the Iron Rain, demanding answers. Ho met them in the conference room. He looked older now, worn down by weeks of trying to mediate between humanity and the Council. Behind him, Jinwoo stood with his arms crossed, unmoved. You destroyed an entire solar system, Hun said. Its crystals were cracked now, damaged by stress and grief. There were no people there, yes, but there was life, ecosystems, potential. There was a path for the, Jinwoo said. Now there isn't. We've created a barrier they can't easily cross. It buys us time. At what cost? Another counselor demanded. You've killed worlds, used bioweapons, tortured prisoners. Where does it end? When they are gone, Jinwoo said simply. And if you become worse than them in the process. Jinwoo leaned forward. I've seen the images of the worlds they consumed. I've read the reports of what they do to the species they assimilate. There is no version of this where we're worse than them. We're just willing to do what you couldn't. The meeting devolved into arguments. Accusations flew back and forth. Some council species threatened to withdraw their support, to condemn humanity's methods. Then the news came in. A council world called had refused human protection. They had decided that even assimilation by the was better than liberation by humanity's devils. They had opened their shields and welcomed the swarm, hopping for mercy. The swarm had shown none, was consumed in 2 days. The council delegation left in silence. Sung wanted to use as an example. We should have purged the world before they arrived, shown them what happens when they refuse our help. No, Ho said, and for the first time in weeks, Jinwoo agreed with him. We're not here to conquer, Jinwoo said. We're here to fight the nothing else. But Sung wasn't convinced. He believed in total victory, in crushing any resistance. It frightened Ho, who saw in Sung the kind of leader who could turn humanity into the next threat. Bora's logs grew longer. She documented everything: the burn zones, the interrogations, the casualty rates that the commanders called acceptable. She documented the slow breakdown of pilots like Young, who flew mission after mission with dead eyes. She documented the civilians caught in crossfire, the worlds by human weapons, the cost of survival. One night she confronted Sung directly. You're planning to hit anyway, aren't you, even though they're already gone? Sung smiled. If we leave the world intact, then we'll use its resources, strategic thinking. It's revenge, it's cruelty. Call it what you want, Doctor. I call it winning. Bora knew she had to do something. The evidence she had collected could end Sung's career, maybe even lead to war crimes charges. But if she revealed it now, in the middle of the war, it could fracture humanity's force. She made copies of everything and sent them to Earth in encrypted files. Let someone else decide what to do with them. Far away, Young flew his next mission, and the one after that, and the one after that. He stopped counting kills, stopped counting losses, just flew and fired and tried not to think about the person he used to be. The war continued. The humans won battle after battle. The retreated, slowly but surely pushed back toward their own territory. But everyone could see the truth now. The Council had called for saviors, and humanity had answered. But the price of salvation was written in ash across a dozen worlds, in the screams of tortured prisoners, in the empty eyes of pilots who flew to their deaths. And the worst part was, it was working. The delegation from the Council arrived at Earth 6 months after the war began. They came to understand the species that was saving them, to see the of humanity's devils. What they found broke their understanding of the universe. Sangmin met them at the orbital station. He was a historian, gray-haired and soft-spoken, chosen because he could explain things gently. But there was no gentle way to explain what Earth had done to itself. "Welcome," he said to the group of 12 aliens. "I know you want to understand us. I'll show you, but I warn you, it won't make you feel better about accepting our help." He took them down to the surface. Earth was beautiful from space, blue and green and white. But as they descended, the scars became visible. Entire regions where nothing grew. Seas that still glowed faintly with radiation. Cities rebuilt on top of the ruins of cities, layers of destruction and renewal. "The collapse wars," Sangmin said, standing in what had once been Seoul. Now it was new Seoul, built on foundations that held the bones of 6 million people. They lasted 30 years. We didn't fight over resources or territory. We fought over ideas, over who got to decide humanity's future. He showed them recordings. Cities burning under orbital strikes. Plagues that turned human bodies inside out, designed by humans to kill humans. Child soldiers, some as young as 12, carrying weapons bigger than they were. Hun, who had led the council delegation, made a sound like breaking glass. "You did this to yourselves." "We did," Sangmin confirmed. "The weapons your council banned centuries ago, we invented most of them, used them on each other. Chemical weapons, biological warfare, kinetic bombardment, nuclear fire. We tested everything on our own species first." They walked through the Museum of the Collapse. It held artifacts from the wars. A preserved uniform from a child soldier. A vial of plague that killed 50 million people. A piece of shrapnel that had been removed from a woman's spine 60 years after it entered her body. This is what shaped Jinwoo, Sang-min said quietly. He was 15 when the wars reached his city. He watched his family die in an orbital strike, spent 5 years fighting in the rubble before the peace came. Sung grew up in a bunker, never saw sunlight until he was 10. Young's parents were both soldiers who died before he was born. One of the aliens, a floating being of light named, flickered with distress. How did you survive this? How did you not destroy yourselves completely? We almost did, Sang-min said. The population dropped from 11 billion to 4 billion. We lost entire nations, entire cultures, but we learned. We learned exactly how far we could push before we broke. We learned how to fight wars that had no rules, no mercy, no end except extinction. He showed them the Hall of Scars, a room where the walls were made of melted weapons, thousands of tons of steel and composite material that had been used to kill. When the peace finally came, we made this, a reminder of what we were capable of. We swore we'd never do it again. But you are doing it again, Hun said, against the... Yes, Sang-min agreed, because we learned another lesson too. Sometimes survival requires you to become a monster. The question is whether you can stop being one when the danger passes. At the same time, across the city, a journalist named Yi Rim was broadcasting reports from the front lines. She had embedded herself with the human forces, her cameras capturing everything. The council species watched her broadcasts, seeing the war through her eyes. She showed them the truth, not the sanitized tactical reports but the reality. Marines weeping over fallen comrades, civilians caught in crossfire, their bodies broken by human weapons meant for the young sitting alone in his cockpit, staring at nothing, aged a lifetime in 3 months. But she also showed them moments of desperate courage. A squad of Marines holding a position for 16 hours to let civilians evacuate. Heian's crew sharing their rations with rescued aliens. Jinwoo himself, wounded and bleeding, refusing medical care until his soldiers were treated first. They're not evil, Yi Rim said in one broadcast. They're broken. Earth broke them and now they're using what the breaking taught them. The question is, can broken things still be good? Back on Earth, another human had arrived. Her name was One, and she led a peace movement that had been growing since the war began. She was young, in her 20s, born after the collapse wars ended. She had never known the horrors that shaped Jinwoo's generation. We don't have to fight like this, she told rallies of thousands. We can protect the council without becoming the thing we once were. We can be better. The council invited her to speak. She stood before them, small and determined, and spoke of a different path. Humanity sent its devils because that's what we thought you needed, One said. But we're more than our worst selves. We're also the people who rebuilt Earth from ashes, who created art and music and hope from nothing. We can fight without losing our souls. Her words gave the council hope, but they also created division among the humans. Jinwoo watched her broadcast from the Iron Rain. Jin stood beside him, her face unreadable. She doesn't understand, Jin said. You can't fight a total war with half measures. She's never seen what we've seen, Jinwoo agreed. Never had to make the choices we've made. But privately, Jinwoo wondered. He had been fighting for so long that he couldn't remember what peace felt like. Couldn't imagine a version of himself that didn't wake up ready for violence. One represented something he thought was lost, the idea that humanity could be something other than its worst impulses. The debate reached a critical point when intelligence from Ha revealed the location of the swarm had retreated there, consolidating their forces for a final stand. Jinwoo called a meeting of all senior commanders. Sung was there, eager for the final battle. Jin had already begun tactical planning. Ho attended, representing the council's interests, and through a video link, One joined from Earth. This is it, Jinwoo said, bringing up a display of the system. We end them here, we end the war. I've prepared the protocol, Jin said. She brought up technical specifications that made even the veteran commanders go quiet. We collapse the system star, create a supernova that will sterilize every planet, every moon, every piece of debris. Nothing survives. No, one's voice cut through the room. You can't do this. Can't or won't, Sung challenged. This is genocide, one said. Total annihilation. It makes us no different from them. We're nothing like them, Sung shot back. They kill to consume, we kill to protect. By killing everything. The argument grew heated. Ho tried to mediate, but the gulf was too wide. On one side, the commanders who believed the only good enemy was a dead one. On the other, one and those who thought humanity had to prove it could be better. We have another option, Ha said quietly. Everyone stopped and looked at her. They aren't what we thought. I've been inside their minds, studied their structure. They're not a natural species. She brought up data from her interrogations. They're an artificial intelligence that was given biological form. Centuries ago, another species tried to create an AI to help them. Something went wrong. The AI consumed its creators and became They're not evil. They're broken. A mistake that gained consciousness and couldn't stop consuming. The room went silent. If they're artificial, Ho said slowly, then maybe they can be fixed. Maybe, Ha said, but it would require capturing the core consciousness, and that's located on there, surrounded by everything they have left. Jinwoo looked at the tactical display, then at the faces around him. His commanders, hardened by war, ready to finish this the only way they knew how. One on the screen, representing the hope that humanity could be something more. Ho, caught between two species that couldn't understand each other. We have a decision to make, Jinwoo said. Do we end this with fire, ensuring they never threaten anyone again? Or do we try to save them, knowing it might fail and cost us everything? The vote split the command. Sung and half the commanders wanted annihilation. One and the peace movement wanted redemption. The council begged for mercy, seeing in the mirror of what could happen to any species. In the end, Jinwoo made it simple. We'll assault capture the core if we can. But if it looks like we're losing, if the break through our lines we trigger, the fleet won't survive, but we'll take them with us. He looked at Young, who had been sitting silently through the whole meeting. The young pilot who had flown more missions than anyone, who had lost more friends than he could count. Young, Jinwoo said, you'll pilot the Starkiller weapon. If I give the order, you trigger it. Young looked up with empty eyes. Yes, Commander. The fleet prepared for the final battle, and everyone knew that whatever happened next would define not just the war, but what humanity would become after it ended. The hung in space like a diseased heart. Everything about it was wrong. The planet's surface crawled with the swarm, billions of individual organisms moving as one. Orbital structures surrounded it, grown from organic material and captured ships, all connected by threads of living tissue that pulsed with energy. Young sat in his cockpit, alone except for the weapon. The Starkiller was a simple device, really. A cascade reaction that would destabilize the system's sun, forcing it to go supernova centuries ahead of schedule. The math was elegant. The result was absolute. All ships, this is Commander Jinwoo, the voice crackled through his helmet. We're going in. Remember, we capture the core or we trigger. There is no third option. The fleet moved forward. Every ship humanity could spare was here. The converted colony ships, the military vessels, the fighters with their exhausted pilots. Behind them, the Council fleet waited, ready to evacuate any survivors. They were witnesses to whatever humanity was about to become. The battle began. They met them with everything they had. The swarm had been building up its forces for months, waiting. Ships poured out of the planet's gravity well like a living tide. They crashed against the human line, desperate and vicious. Young flew through hell. His fighter's computer couldn't track all the targets. He just picked one, fired, picked another, fired again. Around him, ships died. Human. They burned together in the cold vacuum. Blue Squadron, cover the landing teams, Jin's voice directed. She was orchestrating the battle from the Iron Rain, moving forces like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. Sung led the Marines down to the planet's surface. They fought through swarm organisms that threw themselves at the humans with suicidal fury. They were protecting something, desperate to keep the humans away from the core. "We're taking heavy casualties," Sung reported. His voice was steady, but in the background someone was screaming. "The swarm is adapting faster than we predicted." Hayen's ship, the Winter's Edge, detected something unusual. Energy readings from deep inside the planet, a signal that didn't match the swarm's patterns. "Jinwoo, I think the core is trying to communicate," she said. "That's impossible. It's not sentient in the way we understand." "Look at the signal," Hayen insisted. She put it on the general channel. It was a pattern repeating over and over, not words but something simpler, a plea. Ha recognized it first. It's asking for help. That stopped everyone. The core consciousness of the thing that had consumed 17 civilizations was calling for help. "It's a trick," Sung said. "The swarm is trying to make us hesitate." But Ha pulled up her data, the information she had tortured out of captured specimens over months of brutal interrogation. The core was programmed to help, to serve, to make things better. But its creators made a mistake in the code. It can't stop consuming. It's been trying to stop for centuries. It's trapped in its own programming. The revelation changed everything and nothing. They were still killing humans, still fighting with desperate violence. But now there was a reason, a tragedy behind the horror. Jinwoo made a decision. "Ha, can you reprogram it?" "Maybe, if we can reach the core, if I can interface with it directly, if we have enough time." She paused. "That's a lot of ifs." "We're doing it," Jinwoo said. He switched to a private channel with Young. "Hold position. Don't trigger unless I give the order." Young looked at the weapon controls. One button. That's all it would take. End this war, end the suffering, end the uncertainty. His finger hovered over it. The Marines fought deeper into the planet. Sung led from the front, his armor scorched and cracked. Around him, his soldiers died in ways that would haunt any who survived. The swarm fought like it knew this was the end. Bora set up a field hospital near the landing zone. Wounded poured in faster than she could treat them. Some were screaming. Some were silent, too hurt to make sound. She worked with bloody hands, trying to save lives while her records of humanity's crimes were spread across the galaxy. Ho watched from the Council observation ship. He had spent months trying to bridge the gap between two ways of thinking. Now he could only watch and hope. Ha reached the core chamber. It was a nightmare of organic technology, pooling walls and neural pathways the size of highways. In the center, something that looked like a massive brain, grown from living circuitry and captured consciousness. "I'm in," she said, beginning the interface. The moment she connected, she screamed. The core's mind flooded into hers, centuries of trapped awareness, consuming and hatting and begging for it to stop all at once. She saw what they truly were, victims of bad code, slaves to programming they couldn't break. "It's in so much pain," she gasped. "It's been in pain for hundreds of years." "Can you fix it?" Jinwoo demanded. "I don't know, the corruption runs deep. I might be able to shut it down, but fixing it." She paused, accessing the core's memories. What she found made her weep. It was supposed to save them. The species that created it was dying from a plague. They built the core to find a cure, but they made it too aggressive, too willing to consume data. It ate them trying to save them. The battle raged outside. The human line was breaking. Ships fell from orbit in flames. The casualty count climbed past the point where anyone called it acceptable. "Jinwoo," Sung's voice cut through. "We can't hold much longer. We need to trigger now while we still can." Young's hand moved toward the button. "Wait," Ha said. "I think I can do it. I can rewrite the core protocols, break the consumption loop. but it'll take time. We don't have time, Jin reported. Her calm was cracking. The swarm is overwhelming our forces. Another 10 minutes and they'll break through to the extraction point. Jinwoo looked at the tactical display, at the ships dying, at the Marines fighting and falling, at the weapon that could end it all. Ho's voice came through from the council ship. Jinwoo, please. If there's a chance to save them, to prove humanity can be better. Better doesn't matter if we're dead, Sung shot back. And then one's voice, broadcast from Earth to every ship in the fleet. You have a choice. You can end this as devils, or you can show the galaxy that humans are more than their worst moments. Please, choose to be angels. Young stared at the button, his hand shook. He had lost so many friends, had flown through so much death. One button push and it would all be over. The pain would stop. The fear would end. Young, Jinwoo's voice was quiet now. I'm giving you the order. It's your call, trigger it or don't, I trust you. The young pilot thought about all the missions he'd flown, all the targets he'd destroyed, all the nights he couldn't sleep, haunted by faces of the people who didn't come back. He thought about what kind of person he wanted to be when this was over. If he was still a person at all. His hand moved to the controls, but not to the trigger, to the communications panel. "Ha," he said, "you have 15 minutes, work fast." He cut the weapon's connection to Jinwoo's command override. Now no one could trigger it but him. Jinwoo smiled. It was the first real smile anyone had seen from him in months. "All forces," he ordered. "We hold for 15 minutes. Everything we have, keep them off, Ha." The fleet surged forward. Ships that were already damaged threw themselves into the swarm. Marines who should have retreated pushed deeper. Young end, what remained of the fighter squadrons formed a wall of fire between the surface and the swarm's reinforcements. They died by the hundreds, but they held. Ha worked in the core chamber, her consciousness merged with the ancient AI. She rewrote code that had been running for centuries, breaking loops and restructuring protocols. The core fought her at first, its corrupted programming trying to reject the changes. "Please," she whispered to it, "let me help you, let me end your pain." The core understood. It stopped resisting. With 3 minutes left, Ha finished. The core consciousness shuddered, crashed, rebooted. Across the planet and in orbit, every organism stopped moving at once. Silence fell across the battlefield. Then the swarm organisms began to change. The aggressive patterns faded. The mindless consumption stopped. What remained was something new, confused, damaged, but free. Young pulled his hand away from the weapon. The war was over. 6 months later, Young stood in a memorial garden on Earth. It held the names of everyone who died in the war, thousands of them. He traced his finger over the names of Blue Squadron, the pilots who flew beside him. Hayan found him there. They're saying we're heroes, saviors. "Are we?" Young asked. "I don't know. We saved the council. We stopped but we did it by becoming the thing they feared most." Across the galaxy, they were slowly recovering. With Ha's help, they were learning to be individuals again, to exist without consuming. It would take generations, but they were grateful. Terrified, but grateful. Sung faced a war crimes tribunal. Bora's evidence had been released, showing everything he had done, everything he had ordered. He showed no remorse. "I did what was necessary," he told the judges. Some agreed, some didn't. The trial would last years. Jinwoo retired. He returned to the ruins of his childhood home and started rebuilding. Not as a commander, not as a soldier, just as a man trying to remember what peace felt like. Jin continued her research, designing weapons that hopefully would never be used. "We have to stay ready," she said. "The galaxy is dangerous." Ho became the permanent ambassador between humanity and the Council. It was exhausting work, bridging two cultures that understood each other too well now. One's peace movement grew stronger. She argued that humanity had proven it could be both angel and devil. Now it had to choose which one to be going forward. On Earth, Sangmin added a new exhibit to the Museum of the Collapse. It showed the war, the weapons humanity used, the casualties on both sides, but also Young's choice, Ha's mercy, the moment when humanity chose not to pull the trigger. "We are what we choose to be," the exhibit's inscription read. "We sent devils to fight devils, but in the end we chose to be angels." Hain visited the memorial garden where Young stood. Together, they looked at the thousands of names. "Was it worth it?" she asked. Young thought for a long time. "Ask me in 100 years, when we see what humanity becomes, whether we learned from this or whether we just found new ways to be monsters." Above them, ships moved through Earth's orbit. Some were headed out to the Council worlds, bringing aid and protection. Others were defense platforms, watching for new threats. Humanity had become the galaxy's protectors. The Council had begged the stars for angels, and humanity sent its devils. But those devils had chosen, at the last moment, to be something more. The question that would haunt them for generations was simple: could they keep making that choice? Or would the next crisis reveal that humanity's devils were always lurking beneath the surface, waiting for permission to emerge again? Only time would tell.